The chamber of the Galactic Council glowed with 1,000 lights, banners of many worlds hung high above, and the air was thick with pride. Alien leaders sat in rows of polished seats, their voices sharp and filled with arrogance. In the center stood the humans, a small group of envoys, their suits plain, their faces calm, their eyes steady. They had come for peace talks. They had come to discuss a future of cooperation, but instead they were greeted with laughter. One counselor leaned forward and mocked their fragile bodies. Another declared that humanity had no place in the stars. Others joined in. The sound of mocking voices rose like a storm. The hall became an arena of insults, every word meant to humiliate the humans. The human envoy did not shout back. He stood quietly, his hands at his side. His silence only fueled the arrogance of the council. They believed silence was weakness. They believed humans would beg. But silence can be dangerous. Silence can hide storms. The envoy's eyes scanned the chamber, meeting the gaze of those who laughed at him, and in his silence there was something unsettling. Something that made even the loudest voices falter for a moment before continuing. The High Speaker raised his staff and declared that Earth was nothing but a minor world, a child among giants, and that the Council would decide its fate with or without their approval. Laughter followed again, filling the air with cruelty. The human envoy finally spoke, his voice steady and quiet, so quiet that the chamber hushed to hear. He said only this, that humanity had listened long enough, that humanity would not sit at a table where they were mocked like children, and that the galaxy would soon learn what it meant when Earth walked away. Then without another word he turned, his footsteps echoing as he left the chamber. The other envoys followed, and the doors closed behind them with a heavy sound. The council was left in silence, and then, as if to erase their discomfort, laughter broke out again, though thinner this time, less certain. News spread quickly across the galaxy. The humans had walked away from the council. Some thought it was madness, others thought it was pride, but most laughed, believing humanity had signed its own death sentence. Trade with Earth slowed to nothing. Messages sent to human space were unanswered. Patrols that tried to cross human borders reported only static. And then even those reports stopped. The galaxy believed Earth was sulking in silence, too weak to survive without the Council's blessing. They believed humanity would soon come crawling back. But silence has always been dangerous, and Earth's silence was deeper than any had expected. In the shadows of their world, beneath oceans and mountains, factories roared with secret life. Engineers built machines of war unlike any seen before. Shipyards hidden from the galaxy's eyes constructed vessels with black hulls and engines that hummed like thunder. Young soldiers trained day and night, their eyes filled with fire. Every lesson they learned carried the memory of that chamber, of that laughter, and every heartbeat pushed them closer to readiness. At first the galaxy noticed only small things, a patrol ship that failed to return, a merchant vessel reporting strange shadows near human borders, rumors of coded signals pulsing in the dark. The Council dismissed it all as nonsense, calling it fear born of imagination. But the whispers grew louder, and fear began to spread. Then one night it happened. At the edge of Council space, alarms screamed as an unknown fleet emerged. Their ships were massive, their hulls dark as night, their weapons glowing with a fire unseen before. Defenses rushed to meet them, confident in their numbers. But in less than an hour the defense fleet was gone, burned to silence, and the world below received a single transmission. 3 words that froze their blood: you should have listened. Panic raced through the Council. Meetings stretched long into the night. Voices shouted in anger and fear. How had humans built such power in exile? How had silence become strength? They had believed Earth was weak. But weakness did not destroy fleets. Weakness did not build ships that moved like predators in the dark. Reports came from more worlds, colonies falling one after another, black ships appearing, striking, and vanishing again. No negotiations, no pleas, only destruction and silence. The laughter of the Council had become the screams of its fleets. For the first time in centuries the galaxy trembled, the balance of power cracked. Those who had mocked humanity now whispered of them as hunters. Those who had laughed now prayed not to see black hulls above their skies. In the Council chamber itself fear hung heavy. The High Speaker tried to roar of strength, tried to demand unity. But his voice shook, his hands trembled, and even he knew what the others dared not say aloud. Humanity had walked away from the table, but they had not walked into weakness. They had walked into war, and the unexpected war had begun. The galaxy thought the humans would come crawling back, Weeks passed after the walkout from the council chamber and no word came from Earth. Merchants who once traveled to human space found the borders silent. No signals, no escorts, nothing but darkness. Some tried to push deeper, hoping for trade or profit. But few returned. Those who did spoke of strange shadows in the void, black shapes gliding past their scanners. Engines that did not match any known design. Their voices shook as they told stories of feeling watched, as if predators stalked their ships. The council dismissed these accounts as lies or fear. They told the galaxy that humanity had cut itself off and would soon collapse. But in quiet corners of colonies and outposts the rumors spread, and fear began to grow. On Earth, silence was a shield. Governments had united under one purpose. Industries once divided by profit now served a single goal: the survival of humankind. In the vast shipyards beneath the oceans, warships rose from steel skeletons, their black hulls built to absorb light, their engines tuned to move in silence, their weapons crafted from years of secret research. Deep under mountains, factories thundered, producing weapons, armor, and supplies. Millions of men and women trained in camps hidden from satellites. Every day they drilled harder, their voices echoing in chants of unity. They remembered the day the council mocked them. They remembered the laughter, and they promised never again. Children grew up learning stories of exile not as defeat but as fire. Schools taught the new history. Teachers whispered that the council's arrogance had given Earth a gift, the gift of time, the gift of unity. Humanity's strength was not in wealth or numbers, it was in will, and that will was forged in silence, in every home, in every city. The people worked without complaint. Shortages were accepted, sacrifices were endured, because they all knew one truth: when Earth rose again it would rise together. Meanwhile the council's pride blinded them. In their chambers they mocked the rumors, saying that humans were scavenging old ships, that their silence was proof of weakness. Fleets were pulled away from human borders to patrol richer regions, leaving the frontier vulnerable. Yet the border colonies began to whisper louder. Strange coded signals had been detected in the dark, repeating pulses that did not match council languages. Miners working on asteroids reported seeing glimmers of construction far beyond safe zones. Captains of patrol ships admitted to receiving ghost transmissions before vanishing completely. The first real shock came when a convoy of council supply ships vanished. 20 freighters and their escorts disappeared without leaving even wreckage. Only fragments of coded messages reached nearby colonies. Messages that, when decoded, carried 3 words: Earth remembers you. Panic rippled across the frontier. Merchants refused to fly near human space. Colonies began to hoard supplies, and for the first time the council ordered investigations. But every probe sent into human territory was destroyed. Every scout vanished. Inside the council chamber, arguments grew louder. One faction demanded peace talks with Earth. Another demanded immediate war. The High Speaker struck the floor with his staff and declared that humanity was nothing but a nuisance. He said they could not possibly have built fleets in silence, that the disappearances were the work of pirates. But even his voice lacked strength, for the evidence was piling too high. And in the shadows of the chamber, councillors whispered to each other of dread. While they argued, humanity continued to build. Fleets of black warships gathered in hidden docks. Commanders studied maps of the galaxy, pointing to trade routes, supply lines, weak colonies. Their plans were careful, patient, every move designed not to reveal too much too soon. They knew the council was arrogant, and arrogance was the greatest weapon against itself. Let them believe humans were weak, let them laugh a little longer. Because when the silence broke, it would break with fire. On the border worlds tension grew unbearable. Families slept with eyes on the sky. Children whispered of monsters in the stars. Merchants closed their ports early. Soldiers refused to patrol too far from their bases. And then another strike came. A council patrol fleet of 10 ships reported contact near the edge of human space. Their last transmission was filled with static and then silence. Hours later, pieces of wreckage drifted across the void, burned, twisted, and marked with strange scorching that no council weapon could explain. News of this could not be hidden. Images of the wrecks reached the colonies. Stories spread like wildfire. The whispers turned into fear and the fear into dread. Humanity had not disappeared. Humanity had not collapsed. Humanity had changed. The galaxy did not know how many ships were out there. They did not know how strong Earth had become. But they knew one thing for certain. The silence was not weakness, it was waiting. Back on Earth, in the hidden halls beneath the oceans, leaders received reports of the spreading fear. They said nothing, only nodded. their faces calm, their plans already moving to the next step. The council had mocked them at the table, but soon the table would be theirs to overturn. Exile had not ended humanity, it had forged it, and now the galaxy was beginning to realize that the unexpected war was no longer a possibility. It was already unfolding, quietly, in the shadows, and soon it would consume them all. Darkness spread across the borders of human space, and with each passing week the silence grew heavier. Merchants who once dared to skirt near Earth now turned their ships away. Patrols sent to monitor the humans failed to return, and outposts reported strange readings before going dark forever. The council insisted that these were accidents, pirates, malfunctions, anything but what people feared, yet the truth was leaking through whispers. Whispers that humanity was no longer quiet because it was broken. Humanity was quiet because it was preparing. The first to notice were the colonies closest to human space. They had lived for decades under the council's shadow, obeying orders, paying taxes, and trusting the fleets to protect them. But protection had vanished. Council ships that once patrolled their skies now avoided the region. Captains refused assignments near Earth. Soldiers grumbled that they were being sent to die. Fear grew in the streets of those colonies. Children woke from nightmares of black ships drifting above their skies. Elders told hushed stories of the day the humans walked away from the council, and how silence after insult could only mean one thing: vengeance. On Earth itself the truth was very different from the rumors. Underground factories roared day and night, sparks flying from forges, engines tested until the ground shook, warships rolled out of hidden docks, their hulls black and sharp, each one a predator forged from steel. In training halls recruits drilled with merciless discipline, learning to strike fast and vanish, to fight not as prey but as hunters. Their eyes burned with the memory of humiliation. The memory of laughter in the council chamber. Every soldier swore the same oath, that when they returned to the stars they would never be mocked again. The first real wave of terror struck when an entire trade fleet vanished. 50 freighters carrying rare minerals and escorted by a dozen warships disappeared en route to the core worlds. Distress signals went out but stopped abruptly. When a search party arrived they found only silence and wreckage, pieces of ships drifting like bones, burned and twisted, yet marked with precision. It was no pirate raid, no scattered attack, it was a clean strike, efficient and merciless. In the wreckage investigators found one beacon still transmitting. A repeating code that once decoded said only 3 words: Earth remembers you. The council tried to contain the story, but fear spread too quickly. Smugglers told the tale in shadowed taverns, merchants spread it in crowded ports, soldiers whispered it in their barracks. The more the council denied it, the more people believed it. Panic spread through the frontier worlds. Governors sent desperate requests for reinforcements, but reinforcements rarely arrived, and when they did, more fleets vanished, sometimes without leaving even wreckage, sometimes leaving only fragments, marked with burns no one could explain. Inside the council chamber the atmosphere shifted. The arrogance that once filled the hall was gone, replaced with unease. Some councillors shouted for war, demanding that fleets be gathered to burn Earth to ashes. Others demanded talks, claiming that peace might still be possible. But the High Speaker silenced them with his staff, insisting that humans were still weak, that their so-called victories were tricks, that no world exiled could rise again. Yet even he could not hide the tremble in his voice, for deep in his mind he remembered the silence of the human envoy, the way his cold eyes had promised something far more dangerous than weakness. While the council argued, Earth acted. Their fleets spread quietly through the void, testing weapons, charting routes, learning every blind spot of the council. They struck not to conquer but to send messages. Each disappearance, each coded signal, each wreckage floating in silence was a warning. Humanity was no longer waiting, humanity was moving, and the galaxy could feel the shift. One night at the edge of a border system, the stars themselves seemed to change. Farmers working their fields looked up and saw black shapes sliding across the sky, too large to be shuttles, too silent to be council ships. Panic spread across the colony. Families fled to shelters, soldiers scrambled into positions. But nothing happened. The black ships hovered in the sky, their lights glowing faintly like the eyes of predators in the dark. Then they were gone, vanishing into the void, leaving only fear behind. When the council received the report they dismissed it. But those who saw it knew, Earth was no longer hiding, Earth was watching. More reports flooded in. Merchant captains described entire fleets of shadows gliding through the void. Patrols claimed their scanners were jammed by signals they could not decode. Miners swore they saw construction on abandoned asteroids, and everywhere the whispers grew, humanity was building something vast, something the Council could not stop, and soon the whispers became a single phrase repeated in fear and awe: the humans had returned. On Earth, leaders listened to these reports with steady faces, their voices calm. They did not need to rush. Fear was already spreading faster than their fleets. Every whisper, every rumor, every sighting was another weapon. The Council had mocked them at the table, but now the galaxy trembled at their silence, and when the time came to strike openly, no one would laugh. In the training camps, soldiers of Earth repeated the same chant taught since childhood. Their voices like thunder: Earth remembers, Earth avenges, Earth rises. The sound echoed across the halls, across the docks, across the very stars, and though the Council tried to bury the truth was too heavy, too sharp, too loud to be silenced. The disappearances were no longer scattered accidents. They were a storm building in the dark, and the galaxy began to realize the most terrifying truth of all. Humanity had not walked away to sulk. Humanity had walked away to prepare, and now the silence was cracking, and what was coming would not be peace, it would be war. The night sky above the border world glimmered with peace. Families slept in quiet houses. Guards patrolled lazily around the starport, and merchants prepared for another day of trade, yet far beyond the planet. In the deep black where even light seemed afraid to wander, something moved, a shadow larger than mountains, darker than the void around it. Sensors on orbiting stations flickered with confusion, readings scrambled, warnings flashing. The operators thought it was an error, until the shadow lit with faint red lines, pulsing like veins, and the first human warship stepped out of silence. It was nothing like the Council's ships. Their vessels were bright, plated with shining metals, their engines glowing with pride, but the human ship was black, every surface angled to swallow light. Its hull scarred as if forged from the pain of exile. It moved like a predator, slow, deliberate, confident. Its weapons hidden beneath armor until panels slid open like the fangs of a beast. The crew of the orbital station stared in horror, their hands shaking as they called for the planetary fleet. Alarms screamed across the world below. Soldiers scrambled to their posts. Children woke crying. The Council fleet stationed there rushed forward, 20 ships strong, engines burning bright, commanders shouting orders to intercept. They believed numbers would win. They believed arrogance could protect them. The first shots blazed across the void, beams of energy and missiles slamming into the black warship. But the ship did not flinch. Its shields absorbed the fire like a storm breaking on stone. Then the humans answered, weapons roared, lances of white light tore through the Council's ships. 2 cruisers broke apart instantly, their hulls shredded into glowing fragments. Fighters launched to swarm the warship, but they vanished in seconds, burned by turrets that tracked with impossible speed. Commanders screamed orders to regroup, but panic had already spread. On the planet below, people watched as the sky lit with fire. Pieces of burning wreckage rained down like stars falling to their doom. Fear gripped every heart. The defense fleet that had once promised safety was dying before their eyes. In less than an hour the human warship stood alone, drifting slowly above the world. The wreckage of the Council's fleet scattered like bones around it. Then a signal reached every screen, every radio, every device, not an image, not a face, only a voice, calm, steady, human. It said only this: you should have listened. The words echoed across cities, across farms, across every colony structure. Silence followed, silence heavy with terror. Some people dropped to their knees. Others clutched their families. Soldiers looked at their weapons and realized how useless they were. They all remembered the Council's laughter. They all remembered the stories of Earth being weak, and now they saw the truth burning above them. Earth was not weak, Earth had been waiting. When the Council received the news, chaos erupted. In the chamber voices rose into shouts. Some councillors demanded immediate retaliation. Others begged to open peace talks. The High Speaker slammed his staff until cracks split the floor, but even he could not silence the fear, for the reports were clear. One human ship had destroyed 20 of theirs in less than an hour. One ship had shattered their pride. If one ship could do this, how many more waited in the silence of Earth? Spies were sent to gather answers, but they found only shadows. Probes vanished, scouts disappeared. Coded messages returned filled with static and fragments of human signals repeating the same phrase: Earth remembers. Colonies across the frontier began to waver. Their people asked dangerous questions. If Earth could destroy fleets, maybe Earth could also protect them. Governors loyal to the council saw their citizens whispering of defection. Soldiers murmured that perhaps the humans were not enemies but saviors. Every whisper weakened the council further. Back on Earth, the leaders received reports of the strike. They did not cheer. They did not boast. Their faces were calm, their eyes sharp. The plan was moving forward. One ship had shown the galaxy the truth. But it was only the beginning. Deep under oceans and mountains, hundreds more ships waited, their engines silent, their crews ready. The Empire of Silence was no longer just building, it was awakening. In the council chamber, fear turned into denial. Official broadcasts declared the attack was exaggerated. They said the council fleet had been sabotaged. They said the humans had cheated, but no one believed them. Images of the burning sky spread across every world. Merchants carried stories of the black warship to distant colonies. Smugglers repeated them in taverns. Refugees carried them in trembling voices. The story grew with each telling, and with it grew humanity's legend. On the border world where the attack happened, people whispered in the shadows. They whispered that the council had promised safety but failed. They whispered that the humans had promised nothing but still delivered strength. In the hearts of the oppressed a seed was planted, and soon that seed would grow into rebellion. The council had mocked humanity at the table, but the humans had walked away, and now they had returned not with words, but with fire. In the training camps of Earth, soldiers heard the story of the first strike. Their chants grew louder, their discipline harder. Every recruit wanted to be the next to ride the black ships into battle. They knew exile had forged them. They knew humiliation had armed them, and now destiny was calling them. The day of shadows was ending, and the day of reckoning was beginning. The galaxy had seen the first warship, and the galaxy trembled, for if one ship could destroy fleets, then humanity's silence had hidden something far greater. The question no one dared to ask was how many more waited in the dark. But the answer was already written. Earth did not build one. Earth built an empire, and the empire had just announced its return. The story of the black warship spread faster than light, faster than the council could contain. Smugglers carried it into distant ports. Merchants repeated it in markets, soldiers whispered it in their barracks, and ordinary people spoke of it in hushed voices at night. The tale always carried the same image. A single human ship standing alone, wreckage of an entire fleet drifting around it, and the message echoing across the stars. You should have listened. The council tried to control the story. They called it a lie. They said the fleet had been sabotaged. They claimed the humans had stolen alien technology. But the galaxy did not believe them. Too many eyes had seen the fire in the sky. Too many ears had heard the voice. On the border colonies the effect was explosive. These were worlds that had long suffered under the weight of the council, taxed heavily, ignored in times of need. Their people treated as less important than the richer core planets. They had begged for protection for years only to be silenced, and now, in the silence of night, they remembered the black ships. They remembered how one ship had torn apart the fleet that the council swore would protect them, and they began to whisper that maybe Earth was not just strong. Maybe Earth was their chance for freedom. It began with a single mining colony on a barren world. Its governor sent a secret transmission into the dark, a message not of fear but of loyalty, promising to raise Earth's banner if the humans would protect them. Weeks later, thunder rolled across their skies, not natural thunder but the roar of engines. Black warships descended like shadows given life. The people panicked at first, hiding in shelters, but when the ships landed, human soldiers stepped out carrying not chains but supplies, crates of food, medicines, and tools. The people stared in silence, and then slowly they understood. These were not conquerors. These were liberators. By morning the banner of Earth flew beside the colony's flag. Word of this spread faster than the council could react. In nearby systems governors felt their people growing restless. Soldiers began to question orders. Merchants began to hide their ships. The council sent patrols to reassert control. But every time they arrived the black ships struck, fast and merciless, leaving behind only silence and wreckage. The colonies saw who truly had strength, and more of them sent their secret messages, asking not for war but for protection, and Earth answered them all. In the council chamber panic grew into anger. The high speaker roared that humanity was spreading like a plague, that every colony that joined them was committing treason. Fleets were ordered to move, but fleets sent to crush the rebels rarely returned. Those that did limped back in pieces, commanders shaken, their crews broken, and always the same report filled the chamber. The humans did not fight like prey. They fought like predators, precise, merciless, unstoppable. Meanwhile on Earth the leaders watched the galaxy shift, their maps glowing with new stars as more colonies pledged allegiance. The empire that was born in exile was now spreading openly, not just with weapons but with loyalty. Colonies that had been oppressed for centuries now shouted Earth's name as hope. Their soldiers trained beside human soldiers, their banners raised alongside Earth's. The chants of unity grew louder, echoing across camps and parades. Earth protects, Earth leads, Earth remembers. The Council tried to spread propaganda, claiming that the humans were enslaving worlds, that they would bring destruction. But their words carried no weight anymore, their credibility shattered with every defeat, their pride broken with every vanished fleet. The people no longer trusted their rulers, and in many colonies crowds marched in the streets, demanding to join Earth openly. Soldiers tasked with stopping them lowered their weapons, many defected. Some even switched their loyalty on the spot, broadcasting their pledges of allegiance directly to human fleets. The High Speaker ordered executions of defectors, hoping to restore fear, but executions only fueled rebellion. Images of soldiers dying for refusing to fight Earth spread across the stars, and with them came fury. Oppressed worlds that had been silent for centuries now rose up, shouting that they would no longer serve the Council. They demanded Earth's protection, and the black ships always came, descending like guardians, crushing the Council garrisons and raising Earth's banner above every city. In the camps of Earth and its new allies, discipline was strict, training was harsh, but soldiers endured it with pride. They believed they were building something greater than themselves, something that would outlast even their own lives. They believed they were forging a new order, one that would never again mock or abandon them. Their chants grew so loud they seemed to shake the ground, and in those chants the galaxy heard the birth of an empire. The Council was breaking, not just in its fleets but in its foundation. Worlds slipping away one by one, people turning their backs, loyalty fading into rebellion, and everywhere the same truth rose like fire. The humans who walked away from the Council table had returned not with empty words but with steel. Not as beggars but as rulers. What began as laughter had turned into silence, and what began as silence had turned into war. By now even the High Speaker could not deny it. Humanity had built more than fleets, more than armies. It had built loyalty. It had built a banner that others would die for, and as the chamber of the Council echoed with fear and despair, the galaxy beyond was already marching to a new rhythm. The rhythm of an empire of exile turned into an empire of war. The Council had mocked Earth and thought it powerless, but now their greatest mistake was clear. In trying to destroy humanity, they had created its empire. The Council could no longer hide the truth. Fleets had been shattered, colonies were slipping away, and fear was spreading faster than their orders could contain it. In the great chamber the voices of councillors rose in desperation. Some shouted that humanity must be crushed at once. Others whispered that perhaps peace should be sought before it was too late. The High Speaker slammed his staff against the floor and declared that there would be no peace. There would be no surrender. The galaxy could not be ruled by exiles, by humans, and so he ordered the gathering of every remaining ship, every cruiser, every frigate, every carrier, pulled from every loyal world. They would form an armada greater than any in living memory, a wall of fire that would burn Earth to ash. The summons went out and the ships came, vast formations stretching across the void, thousands upon thousands of hulls gleaming, banners of many species raised high. Soldiers marched on decks. Commanders shouted orders with pride. The Council broadcast the sight across the galaxy, promising their people that this was the end of the human threat, that no exile-born fleet could stand against such power. But behind the speeches and banners, fear remained. Captains remembered how smaller fleets had been torn apart in hours. Soldiers remembered the coded message left behind in wreckage. Earth remembers. On Earth the news was received without panic. In hidden command centers beneath oceans and mountains, leaders studied the maps of the incoming armada. Their eyes calm, their voices steady. They had expected this. They had prepared for it. Exile had taught patience, and patience had been turned into strategy sharper than any blade. Orders spread quietly through the empire. Fleets that had waited in silence now moved into position, not to face the Council head-on but to bleed it piece by piece. When the Grand Armada entered human space, the stars themselves seemed to tremble. Their engines glowed like suns, their formations stretching across light years. The commanders expected to find resistance at once. They expected humanity to throw its fleets forward in desperation. But they found nothing, empty skies, empty worlds, only silence. They advanced deeper, Growing uneasy, memories of vanished fleets gnawed at their confidence. Still they pressed forward. Pride demanded it, arrogance blinded them. The first strikes came from behind, black warships sliding out of the void, their weapons cutting into the rear lines. Ships exploded before alarms could even sound. Confusion tore through the ranks. Orders clashed as commanders tried to reorganize. But the humans were already gone, vanishing into the dark. Hours later another strike came from the flanks. Then another from above. The Council's vast armada was bleeding. Not in one great battle, but in 1,000 small cuts. In the Council's war rooms, commanders shouted in panic, demanding to know how humans could move so quickly, how they could strike and vanish. The truth was simple and terrifying. Humanity had studied them for decades, every tactic, every formation, every weakness. They knew how the Council moved, they knew how it thought, and they used that knowledge like a weapon. While the Council fought with pride, humanity fought with precision. On border worlds, families watched skies burn as pieces of Council fleets fell like fire. They whispered to each other that the humans were unstoppable, that maybe they were not invaders but saviors. Soldiers sent to fight Earth began to desert. Some defected openly, broadcasting pledges of loyalty to the humans rather than die for a council that no longer protected them. Fear turned into rebellion, rebellion turned into loyalty, and the banner of Earth rose higher. The Armada tried to regroup, forming into tight formations, hoping numbers would protect them. But humanity had learned patience. They did not rush. They cut supply lines. They destroyed communication relays. They starved the fleets of fuel and food. Days turned into weeks. The Grand Armada that was supposed to crush Earth was instead being crushed by its own size. Finally, the Council tried to force a decisive battle, gathering what remained of their scattered ships into one last stand. They thought humans would finally reveal themselves in full, and they were right. For when the trap was set, the black fleets came out of the dark in numbers the Council had never imagined, carriers, battleships, destroyers, all moving as one, their hulls glowing faintly in the void, their weapons burning with the fury of exile. The battle that followed would be remembered as the War of Reckoning, the void lit with endless fire. Council ships fought desperately, but every tactic failed, every maneuver counted. Human fleets moved like predators, cutting through them piece by piece. Voices screamed across comms, begging for help, begging for retreat. But no help came, no retreat was possible. By the end the stars were filled with wreckage, and the humans stood unbroken. Back on Earth the reports came in one by one. Fleets destroyed, colonies liberated, the empire expanding. Leaders did not cheer. They did not boast. They only gave the next orders: move forward, secure the systems, protect the loyal. The Empire of Silence was no longer hiding. It was marching openly across the galaxy. In the Council chamber silence reigned. The High Speaker stared at the reports with hollow eyes. The councillors around him whispered of surrender, whispered of escape. They had mocked Earth at the table. They had laughed at its weakness. But now they saw the truth. Exile had not killed humanity. It had forged it into steel, and now the galaxy would pay the price. The Grand Armada had been their last hope, and it was gone, broken not by chance but by design. Humanity had turned silence into strategy, patience into power, exile into empire. The galaxy trembled, knowing the Council's reign was ending, and that a new master was rising, the master they had once cast aside. The War of Reckoning had left the galaxy trembling. The Council's great armada was gone, its ships scattered as wreckage across the void, its commanders silenced forever, its soldiers either dead or surrendered. The stars were littered with reminders of their defeat, and the whispers of fear spread faster than any fleet could travel. On distant colonies merchants told stories of human fleets moving like shadows, of black ships with eyes of fire that struck and vanished, of banners bearing the Star of Earth raised above cities. The Council tried to control the stories, but no one believed them anymore. Their power was broken, their pride shattered. On Earth the leaders of humanity gathered in their underground halls. Around them maps of the galaxy glowed, red markers of fallen fleets turning blue as colonies swore allegiance. Their faces were calm, their voices steady. They did not celebrate. They only issued new orders: expand further, secure the trade routes, protect the colonies that pledged loyalty, punish those who resisted. Patience had brought them this far, discipline would carry them further. The Empire of Exile was no longer a secret. It was rising openly across the stars. In the camps of soldiers the news spread like fire. Cheers thundered across the training grounds. Humans and their new allies shouted the same chants together: Earth protects, Earth leads, Earth remembers. The words shook the ground, voices of different species speaking as one. Soldiers who had once fought for the council now drilled under human officers. Learning tactics sharper and faster than anything they had known before, they fought not for survival anymore, but for destiny, they believed. In Earth because Earth had shown them strength, and strength was something the galaxy respected. Meanwhile the council scrambled in desperation, its chamber half empty. Many councillors had fled, others whispered of surrender. But the High Speaker roared against it, insisting that humanity was only strong because of tricks, insisting they could still be stopped. But his words fell hollow, reports piled higher, fleets gone, colonies lost, supply lines broken, even loyal worlds were beginning to whisper of rebellion. The council sent desperate messages to allies begging for ships, but fewer. And fewer answered, for no one wanted to die for a dying order. On the frontier the humans moved openly now, entire fleets appearing above worlds, their black hulls blotting out the stars, their weapons silent but ready. Messages broadcast to the colonies were simple. They offered protection, freedom from the council's taxes and laws, loyalty in exchange for strength, and one by one worlds agreed. Some resisted, but their resistance lasted only days. The black fleet struck with precision, destroying garrisons, silencing defenses, and then leaving food, medicine, and supplies. Even the conquered began to see them not as destroyers but as rulers. The council tried one last gamble, sending what remained of its fleets to strike at the allies of Earth, to break the chain of loyalty forming around humanity. But every strike ended in disaster. Human ships seemed to know their moves before they made them. Ambushes turned into traps, attacks into massacres. Commanders returned with nothing but terror in their eyes. If they returned at all, soldiers began surrendering at the first sight of Earth's banners, unwilling to fight enemies who fought like predators. On Earth the factories still roared, more ships launched from hidden docks, more weapons forged. The Empire was not slowing, it was accelerating. Exile had taught them never to trust rest, never to accept peace too easily. So even in victory they pushed forward. Black fleets filled the void, their engines humming like a storm waiting to break. The galaxy watched in silence as humanity grew stronger with each passing day. In markets and taverns across distant colonies people spoke openly now. They said the council had ruled for too long. They said humanity had suffered and returned stronger. They said Earth was the future, not the past. Rebels painted the Star of Earth on walls. Children played games shouting human chants. Soldiers deserted council barracks to join Earth's empire. Fear had transformed into loyalty, and loyalty was more powerful than any weapon. The High Speaker called for one final defense, to gather the last fleets, to hold the core worlds. But even his own guards no longer trusted him. Whispers spread through the chamber that perhaps it was better to bow to Earth than to be destroyed by it. Pride had been their strength, but now pride had turned to poison. The council was collapsing from within. And across the stars, the humans marched, fleets black as night moving like thunder, colonies falling one by one, banners rising in their wake, no longer whispers, no longer shadows, but open conquest. What began as mockery at the table had become war in the skies, and war had become empire. The galaxy trembled under the weight of this truth. Humanity was not just surviving, it was rewriting the order of the stars. Every world knew that the Council's age was ending, and the age of Earth had begun. Their silence had turned into fire, their exile into destiny, and as their fleets carved across the void, the galaxy could no longer deny it. The empire of Earth was here, and it was unstoppable. The Council's chamber, once filled with pride and laughter, now stood in ruin. The great banners of alien empires hung torn and faded. The marble floor was cracked from countless strikes of the High Speaker's staff. But no staff could hold together what had already crumbled. Many councillors no longer came, their seats empty, their voices silenced by fear or by flight. Those who remained whispered nervously, avoiding each other's eyes. For outside these walls the galaxy had already changed. The council had mocked humanity. And now the price of that mockery was being paid in fire and silence. Reports flooded in faster than the council could read them, world after world defecting, fleets surrendering without battle, colonies raising banners with the Star of Earth, council soldiers refusing orders, governors broadcasting messages of loyalty to humanity. The High Speaker shouted that it was all lies, that the council still ruled, but even his own guards did not believe him anymore. His voice echoed through the chamber like a ghost of a dead empire. In the void, the black fleets of Earth moved like storms, Their engines silent but their presence overwhelming. They descended on worlds with precision, first disabling defenses, then landing not with chains but with supplies, bringing food, medicine, and order where the council had long brought only taxes and fear. People cheered their arrival, seeing in humanity not just conquerors but rulers who kept promises. What had started as rebellion had grown into a new order, and the galaxy welcomed it, for in Earth's empire there was strength, and strength meant survival. On Earth itself, factories still roared, the shipyards glowed with fire, and soldiers trained with iron discipline. Not one moment was wasted. Leaders stood over maps of the stars, their eyes sharp, their hands steady. They gave no speeches of arrogance, only quiet orders: secure this system, protect that colony, expand the banner, never grow complacent. Exile had taught them the danger of pride, and now every decision was measured, every step careful. For they knew the galaxy would not forgive weakness. The final blow to the council came not from a fleet, but from its own people. In the core worlds riots broke out. Citizens stormed government halls shouting that they would no longer die for a broken order. Council soldiers tried to fight them but many laid down their weapons, choosing to stand with their people instead. And above those worlds, black ships appeared, their hulls blotting out the sun. Their weapons never fired, for there was no need, the sight alone was enough. The people surrendered, and the banners of Earth were raised high over the core itself. The High Speaker tried to flee, his ship racing into the void, but it was intercepted by a single human cruiser, black and silent. His vessel was boarded, his staff torn from his hands, and he was brought before human leaders. His voice shook as he demanded respect, demanded his title be honored. But no one listened. He had mocked humanity when they sought peace. He had laughed when they walked away. Now he stood broken. And humanity no longer needed to speak. Their silence was enough. Across the galaxy the council was dissolved, its name remembered only as a warning, its chamber sealed forever, a monument to arrogance, and in its place rose something new, the Empire of Earth, not born from wealth or treaties, but from exile, from silence, from fire. Its fleets patrolled the stars, its soldiers stood guard on countless worlds, and its voice carried weight heavier than any before. Where the council had ruled through fear and corruption, Earth ruled through strength and discipline, and the galaxy accepted it, for none could resist it. In the camps of soldiers chants rose louder than ever. Humans and their alien allies stood side by side, their voices shaking the skies. Earth protects, Earth leads, Earth remembers. The chant spread to markets, to homes, to schools, until it became the anthem of an empire. Children grew up not fearing exile but taking pride in it. For exile had been the fire that forged their destiny. And in the silence of night, as the stars burned steady above, the galaxy remembered the day the council had mocked humanity at the table. They remembered the laughter, the arrogance, and they remembered how the humans had stood, silent, calm, before walking away. That silence had been the first step, the step into exile, and exile had built the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. The council had believed humanity's withdrawal meant weakness, but it had meant war. They believed exile would kill Earth, but it gave Earth the time to rise, and now no one laughed at humanity anymore. No one mocked their fragility, for the humans had returned, and they had returned not as outcasts, but as rulers, not with words, but with fleets, not with treaties, but with destiny. The age of the council had ended, and the age of Earth had begun. An empire born from silence, from patience, from vengeance, now stretched its hand across the stars, and in every corner of the galaxy one truth echoed, spoken in whispers, in chants, in the silence of those who dared not speak aloud. Earth remembers, and the galaxy would never forget.